So
would I have an opportunity to ask questions and sort of engage that way?
During the public comment section. So we're going to be reformed when we put people in the committee and they step forward to do the work. Then there's going to be a discussion of the committee as opposed to a discussion of a community discussion. And so we will want to limit some of those comments to when agenda items went out to the floor for discussion or when it became an issue that there was larger discussion. But it would be probably a little bit more formal and a little bit less interjection of necessarily ideas.
And if I did do the committee, is it a once, like, do you know what the commitment is at this point?
Oh, this is, I think that we are pretty free form. We have an issue that needs to be dealt with. The time frame is less important than the action. And so we have to come to a consensus on something that we can start dealing with some of the major issues of the school, take an investigation as to what specifically we're looking at doing quickly and what we think that we might get some help with. And it's possible that there's some things we might get some help with. And then we're going to move forward. So I have no idea the commitment, and but I think we're going to be here monthly for a year.
I just wanted to make sure that I'd be able to time-wise.
And so there's going to be a point at which we stop taking members, but it won't be. I don't think it'll be right off the bat.
Okay.
So anybody else? Doug? So I'm open to discussion. Are you ready?
Oh, no, I was just saying, yeah.
You want to come along for the ride? Appreciate it.
I would as well, yeah.
Okay. Bruce.
Are you just asking right now who's willing to be on the committee?
I'm asking if you have any thoughts about what we're going to do here and how we've changed what's going to happen and why we've changed what's going to happen, and then whether or not you're interested, we can get to in a minute. So that's the second part of this is going to be committee, the purpose and the role. But the first one is committee composition. If you have any thoughts about, and because I'm going to have to be open to suggestions here because I'm winging it a little bit. As you know, I've only been in this for a short while, and I don't really know how this is going to work.
First of all, yes, I'm willing to be on the committee. I was on the previous committee. I wasn't able to be quite as involved as I wanted to be because of coaching soccer. Secondly, I appreciate all the work the school board does, having served there many years. At some point, as you guys know, ladies, you have to make a decision.
Sure.
We try to be as transparent as possible, but at some point we have to make a decision. I certainly thought I was as transparent as could be, encouraged input from the public, input from the committee. So we formed the committee after a couple of meetings. And as you just said a few minutes ago, we have an issue that needs to be dealt with. So yeah, we don't have to deal with it in the next couple of months. I know we just are working on getting our budget presented for town meeting day. We're going to vote on that and see how that goes, and how much that's going to impact people's taxes. But I would urge the board, and it doesn't have to be tonight, but I would urge the board to set a deadline at some point as to, okay, this is what we're doing. This is, what we're looking at. We're all going to be in this together and then the board's going to make a decision. But this is the deadline for when the board is going to stop taking input, and then we're going to, vote. The committee's going to vote and vote to the board, and the board's going to either accept that recommendation or not. And it can be, I don't have an idea of the time frame.
Sure.
I'm not saying it has to be June, it has to be July. I'm saying probably even close to a year from now, but it has to be dealt with, as we know. And you hear all these things out there like, well, we could close the high school and that's going to free up space. It's not going to go, the issue is not going to go away. We have issues in this bill that need to be dealt with. We're not the only high school or school in the state dealing with building issues. And I'll get into how I feel about closing this high school when the time is right, but I won't go there right
Sure.
now.
No, I agree with that about the timeline. I think it's helpful too to keep everybody on the same.
So one of our future agenda items might be a hard timeline.
Yeah.
And that might be something that we don't have that on the agenda tonight, and I don't think we'd be able to do it anyway. Okay. Katie?
One more comment. Molly said something about size of the committee. What does the rest of the board think is a manageable size? I mean, like, if everybody in this room wants to be a pretty big committee.
It's already a pretty big committee. So I had some other community members reach out, and I told them that they say, I want to be on the committee. And we fall in that trap before. You put them on the committee, and then they don't show to a single meeting. So you sort of have to be present to be included. And I think that maybe after what happened with the advisory group is you have a meeting, you say after the next meeting, we're not adding additional members. Sure.
Do we have anybody participating from Zoom tonight?
We have
One.
we have one of our assistant, our elementary principal is here and one other parent
Okay.
of an elementary parent.
So you might want to ask them if they're interested in being on the committee.
Okay. Sarah's going to stuck on it. Sarah wants to stuck on it, whether she wants to be or not. So,
Yeah, I know that, but
now I'll ask Chrissy. Dave.
There were 17 members on the advisory group. And whoever came in and wanted information, it almost, well, not almost, it did start from the beginning and introduce things. And then sometimes it's harder for people to catch up if they're not involved throughout the whole process. But I think the 17 that were involved, and I think we had a good handle on it. If Eric wants to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely with you. I think that we had, we were able to, we did have, one meeting where we had a lot of public that we were able to nice and sandbox sort of the rehashing of how we got here, what decisions were made to get us here, type of things. And I think that was probably good for catharsis as well as some transparency as well, that folks actually came and heard that this is a problem that is a hard problem to solve, and we're considering a lot of things very seriously, and it's not something that we are that any of you have taken lightly or brushed off. And so to that end, I think that as you get sort of a set committee, and that way you can say, as folks come in and ask, oh, well, who even told you that you need to do X, Y, or Z, we can sort of shut that off into, here's the report, here's all the information that you need to go give. And you're not going to waste time in meetings rehashing a lot of that, which you may have to do if you're going to bring in somebody, if you keep expanding sort of the population of the community, because they're just going to have to play catch up, and if they don't do their homework, it gets harder and harder. So yeah, I think there should definitely be a hard line on this to at least move the meetings forward, especially if we want to sort of shunt that those types of questions into a specific item on the agenda, rather than having a free-flowing discussion about how we can solve this, because it's a difficult problem. There's a lot of things to consider. So,
All right.
One way you can address that, you're having to tell everybody when they come in and start anew every time, is you could have a point person who just, if somebody new comes in, you could say, have a point person who makes sure they're caught up, give them information after the meeting, and kind of have one person who connects with people out of the meeting to give that information, so people still get it, but it's not taking up the meeting time. Is just one way to work around that.
And as a committee, will there be an agenda that's listed out that they could kind of also go and backtrack and see?
These are board meetings. There'll always be a posted agenda. They'll always be posted.
So that could also be put out for them to do their due diligence and homework and check it out.
And I'm back to being the minute person for this.
Oh, are you?
As the clerk. Yeah. So those will be there too.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Yeah, and Larry just mentioned the website, which is now outdated because we've moved into the committee model, but that will be reworked and updated once we get going with the committee too. So,
All right, so-
It's all there. so.
right, it's all there. Yeah. Oh, right.
So regarding committee composition, I think that we'll be accepting members tonight of the willing public, and then we'll be accepting members again next week of the willing public, and then we're going to pick a hard, unless somebody comes in later that really seems to have some information that we could use or some sort of thing, like we can maybe figure it out. And probably at the next meeting, we'll move to more specifically to a room where we can all sit at the same table. So currently I've got you guys sitting back there and you're the audience, but that's not the job here. So we could do that tonight if we wanted to, and you guys could scoot up, but if you can hear us fine, I think we're fine there. All right, so anything else on committee composition anybody wants to talk about?
So what's our plan going forward? We're going to wait on that, or?
So do you want to add members now? Do you want to add members at the end? Because if you want to add members now, we can add them by consensus. So if you're in the room and you want to, and you're already ready to commit to this, you raise your hand, and then we'll say the consensus of the group. Bruce Milady would like to join this committee. Do I have a general consensus of the board members here that we can add? Bruce?
Yes.
Lance Warren would like to join the committee. Similar, do I have a consensus of the board?
Yes.
Doug Pasha would like to join the committee. Consensus of the board. You want to do it? Rhiannon Esposito is going to join the committee, and thank you, Rhiannon. And she was going to be a new one. We appreciate you coming in. Katie White would like to join the committee. Consensus of the board. Allison Despath would like to join on. Consensus of the board. Rob, you have to be on, Rob. Rob Bellamy's got to be on. So I don't even need a consensus of the board. Mary, would you like to come on? Thank you, Mary. Mary would like to come on, consensus of the board, and Eric, similarly, you have to come on. So Eric, you would please consensus of the board. And then Sean McNamara is an employee. Sean, the principal, two building principals, and our career technical education advisor will be on the committee as well with their input. Larry, you're on it. And Sean, you're going to be on it. We're going to need your help all we can. And so far, that's about where we're going to be. Chrissy, you want to do it?
I'm currently coaching 5-6 basketball.
Turn your phone. Pretty Willa. Willa can't be on it. You got to be older than 12.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can commit to every meeting, unfortunately.
Wait, what? Wait, what they want you to do?
Can you hear me? No? Let me put it in the chat.
Do this if you want to be on the committee. Do you be on it? Go like this. I'm sorry. She doesn't think she can commit to each meeting. Okay, so you make your decision next week. I'll lean on you in the intervening time. She just put a chat up and she says, I don't think I can each meeting. Oh, so is her husband Pete.
No, we're not attending any other. Our committee.
So committee composition we're about to move on from for tonight. There's not a lot of other people here. So I think we're going to move on from that one. And then we're going to go on to the purpose and the role of the committee.
But meaning, are we still open to new, I think maybe being clear about whether.
Additionally, if you don't come to the first meeting and you don't come to the second meeting, it's tough to say how committed you are. So the first meeting, we're all here. You guys have joined onto the committee. In meeting 2, we'll also be accepting members. And then in meeting 3, moving on with our business. It's not an open door forever. So that's going to be, I think that's going to be our plan. Can we?
Meeting 2.
You guys want to make a motion on that form? So I've got that motion that first. I'll take a second. Thank you for that.
It's a good idea, otherwise
It's, and
Because what we talked about is, let's say you want to rock the boat and I bring in 40 of my people, you can do that. You have to have it.
So
that's really the thing to do. Is you need to set a deadline for your members.
right, and if 40 people come to next meeting and just to rock the boat, they're not going to show up to the next 10 after that.
Right.
So,
Right.
work with that.
Then we have to make some decisions on who can and who can't.
okay. We'll still have to be vetted to a degree. Okay. So I got a motion. I got a second on the table. Any further discussion from the board here? All in favor of setting that limit on membership, please say aye.
Aye.
3, and I'm again. So that motion carries. Okay, I'm going to move on from committee composition now. We're going to talk about the purpose and the role of the committee, and it's the school. So, and at this point now, everybody here can talk. You're on the committee, okay? So this is now open discussion. Everybody here can talk. There's going to be some parts where I have Sean talking specifically, but we just made that transition in committee composition. So now if you have something to say, you're allowed to talk, and you're allowed not to have to wait for me to call on you, and here we are. So the purpose and the role of the committee, I'll start, is we have to figure out some solutions to the issues in the school that are glaring, to the issues in the school that have to be fixed, and to the space concerns and to the educational inefficiencies for the kids. So what we're looking for is, a way to do it, and we know already that the 3 plans that we've had extensive work done on, when you do the math out on the community, are too expensive. And we've put those away in a formal action for now, pending state aid, if something comes down the pipe. And so there may be some things that we can do. And so we want to start talking about now is ideas. But specifically, the purpose and the role of the committee, I need everybody to try to figure out, if you all can all agree with me here, is to work toward a solution to solve the problems of the school. The specific problems that are outlined in the original report that we got from Truex Collins, which also includes the space. So from the original needs assessment, we had an issue with space, we had an issue with elementary space, and we have an issue with a lot of the critical systems in the building being outdated and in desperate need of replacement, by and large. Does anybody want to talk about that? Rob?
Yeah, it began from a concern about the elementary being small, right? So, if you do that, you look at the whole building, and we get the results of that, nice thing, which was very useful. But I think it'd be good to step back and look at what are the most urgent priorities for the program and the infrastructure. And to get a look with the ask of each and say, this is the most critical issue of each of those, and make a list. And after we do that, we could get estimates of what each would be, or to get estimates of the urgent items. Okay? Because that would be the least that we could do, maybe.
I believe Truex had already done a 1, 2, 3 as a level of urgency.
Yes.
So maybe we start with their 1 and go through of the 1, what are the most urgent pressing needs that if this fails, we're completely, you know, to Mark's point, like if one of these things happens, you know, then we're in a catastrophic situation. So I think looking at the 1, you know, bucket of that 1, how much dollars does that compose? How much total expenses is within that? And then of that, let's prioritize it. Let's say there's 30 items for the top 10. And are the lower 20 a year or 2 out, or are they imminent? It may be like all of them has to be. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's the situation, because we always talked about that whatever we did was going to trigger the need to do all of the work.
Right.
So the project, if you start in, and the first thing that you would tackle is you say the most important thing is behind this wall in the 37th building,
right.
Then you've triggered everything. Then you've turned on the machine and you said, now we have to at least make good.
And so those are the conversations that we'd have to look at and say, well, maybe this doesn't, these don't involve tearing into stuff, but right.
Wasn't there like a number, like didn't have to be over like a certain number amount of dollars?
It's that was some of that was speculation, but I think it was probably if it started a renovation project that was to do one of those areas and it was more than $1 million is what we talked about. If it was more than $1 million, then it became a major renovation. And once you started a major renovation on a building that was in sight, and we differentiated it out between building and building. This was the 37 building and the 59 edition, but the state said this is a building. And so if you start the renovations on a building without sprinklers, you have to finish that renovation with sprinklers throughout the whole building. And so that's one of the things that we have to look at. Are we trying to avoid that trigger? Are we trying to pick off what we can pick off? In the meantime, are we, or are we looking to try to not go behind walls? So this is one of the things that we have to consider. And so the purpose so I think where we are, and the purpose and the role of the committee is to attack this same building issue that we were attacking before. And I don't know if anybody has got that put into words exactly. Molly, you're the words. How are you going to write that up in the minutes?
I'll have to play with it tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, there might be like a code expert or someone with expertise at the state that could provide some guidance around, say we had a work plan in place to address these code issues. We don't necessarily have to have them all complete on the same day. Do you know what I'm saying? Like if
Right,
there's
so-
a work plan for 3 years that, I guess that's the urgent need that I'm seeing is once you touch it, all of this money we've got to pay, but maybe there's a way to work with them that if we have a plan in place to address some of the code issues that, you know what I'm saying?
So this might actually be a Sean McNamara question. This is Sean McNamara. If we were to plan this out with the state in terms of filling out the papers, and we said in the next 10 years we are going to X, 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 and then in year 10 we have sprinklers, does that count as one plan toward renovation? Do you know?
That would be a sprinkler renovation, be a single plan.
So,
Is that what you're saying?
yeah, if we said that we have 10 years to do this, at the end of 10 years, would the sprinkler, would that be the end of the construction project, or would it be the minute that we finished each area, it has to be an operational sprinkler system?
I would think the minute you finished each area, it would have to be an operational system.
And I think the problem we'll have, Clayton, is, it would be like if you knew you had that pot of money right?
Right.
And you said in the next 10 years, we're gonna do this, and we have the money set aside so we can do this. That all is dependent on the community's vote. So if I remember the numbers right, and I meant to do a little more homework before I came tonight, the do right thing, whatever, was around 32 million.
32 million in early 2022 dollars,
And-
with 4.5 more million set aside for contingencies.
Right.
So-
And the issue we're looking at, and again, none of us want to see our taxes go up. None of us here are millionaires or billionaires, but the more we kick things down the road, the more expensive it's going to get.
Indeed.
South Burlington was looking at a project that they thought was going to cost them $4 million about a year ago. It's not going to be about $12 million. So instead of doing any renovations, they're just going to bring in some remote classrooms.
And those went up in price by double.
Exactly. You know, Fairfax just approved in addition to their school that was going to be less when they started the project. They did vote to do it, but it's going to be about 36 million. And that's in addition to 9 classrooms and getting the sprinkler systems all up to date. So as I said earlier, we're not unique. There's a lot of schools, those are just a couple of schools. There's many schools in the area. And I'm not saying we need to make that decision tonight. I'm just throwing it out there that I agree, once you start tearing something apart, then you're into it. But I think, living in Danville and knowing most of the people in Danville, I think the community would prefer to look at something and say, okay, this is a one-time thing, let's vote on this, our taxes are gonna go up, and, you know, and obviously, you always have the option to vote no. Then to say, okay, you're gonna come back to us this year, and in 3 years, you're gonna come back to us, in 5 years, you're gonna come back to us. I think that's, you know, we need to, I like that, the name, we need to make it right. You know, and we need to come up with a plan to do that.
And just 2 thoughts on that. I know the make right thing, although that number was more appealing than all the others, it doesn't obviously account for the space issue.
At all.
It seemed to be like the driving factor, or one of the driving factors. But the other thing that I'm wondering is, do we know if there are true hard lines around, if you rip into this, you got to do this, this, and this, and are there ever exemptions that could potentially be applied because of a financial reality situation for a school from a safety standpoint? So I don't know if there's ever a way to apply for an exemption for, this is all in line, this is all in place. If we do this, can we fill out a form to be like, hey, we don't have the money, we don't look like we need to spend it on this. So I don't know if that's like a hard no, or if that is something that can be explored.
That's something we can look into, I hope. Doug?
Yeah, well, I agree with that. That's, from my perspective, the bottom line is you need to establish a baseline and then go from what are the immediate needs that have to be, I mean, are you being told that the schools will shut down tomorrow if this doesn't happen, or within a certain amount of time? And come up with those points first, and then, you know, come up with some sort of ballpark figure what that is going to be, and then go from there. Try to incorporate maybe some of the other things that need to be addressed. But because at the end of the day, we don't have the tax base to support any of the stuff we're talking about. So, you know, sadly, but it's the truth.
Sure. Those numbers hit us real hard when they hit us. Those numbers, it wasn't even, the money was ridiculous. So the money was just almost, it was basically laughable. But what was telling about those numbers was there's 1,100 people, there's 1,100 houses to pay for this right now. And it wasn't that, forget the money, it's 1,100 houses that have to pay for this. And so however much money that you're going to beat out of everybody's pockets, there's only so many people you can turn upside down and shake.
So that's why, you know, it's important to establish that first. And then the other thing, you gotta remember, you know, whatever is decided, or, you know, this committee, you gotta get buy-in from the townspeople. You know, there's some people that want the school closed, there's other people that want to spend $100 million. So somewhere along the lines, we need to, you know, come up with something that enough people are going to agree with. You know, I mean, I don't think most people want to see the school closed or anything like that, but at the same time, you know, when you're looking at figures, you know, struggling paying fuel bills and everything else, you know, they're going to say, you know what, we just can't do it. And they're going to vote no. So all this talk we have, no matter what it is,
the end of the day, it's not gonna mean much. I mean, we didn't get on the starting gate before because things were so high.
Sure.
So, you know, that's underlying, that's what you need to remember.
Yeah, we're gonna try again. We're gonna try again. We're gonna see if we can come up with something that people can buy into. Bruce?
I agree with Doug. The only thing I'm not saying I disagree with, but the thing you gotta consider, I'm not gonna get into too much about the options as far as holding the school, but, you know, if people think closing the school, their taxes are still gonna be about the same or more, because then you have no say. Now we have a say in our community. You can go to the polls and you can vote no on your taxes. And the school board has to go back to work, present another budget. Eventually, hopefully, it'll get passed. You close the high school, you have no say in what the tuition is gonna be. If you wanna send your kid to St. J, send your kid to LI or wherever, where you want to send them, you have no say in what the tuition is going to be. So that tax increase is still going to be there. It's not going to be like, oh, you close the high school and we don't have to pay that tax increase. No, you still pay taxes on the high school. You're still paying for high school kids from Danville to go to wherever it is they go. And the prices, we could do a survey, and I'd be willing to bet that somebody can spend time. I'd be willing to bet it would cost us a lot more to close this high school than it would not to do the renovation project.
Yeah, but I don't think that we take anything off the table as much as you're probably right.
Yeah.
I think it's important that we pursue every option, including that one, so that if the community says, well, did you look at this? You know, like to Doug's point, there's some people that are like, get rid. Well, yeah, we did look at it, and it's this much money.
Yeah.
And if we don't do that, then we don't have we're not educated as to exactly how much that is. And it goes beyond the survey. You know, we look at what the state rate is and what our pupils are here outside of the tuition that we get from the high schools, which would take into account that as well. And we have to look at it that way. And I think that has to be pursued as with many, you know, people talk modulars, we talk, you know, we've already looked at additions. And so I just think that I think it's important for this group to talk through every option. Don't put anything off the table. As crazy as some of the ideas we sound.
Well,
It is good if you look at the long term. Is the enrollment going to increase, decrease? What's the projection? But I like to all over the state, you know, because I think there are projections out there. And you have to be flexible as you look at the future. Okay, if we drop it, but perhaps our structure will be empty in spots. What do we do with that? So we have to look at a flexible answer that wouldn't drop the expenses.
And sort of on that note, oh, sorry, did you have something?
Kate.
I was gonna add on to what Rob said, something that may be helpful for the role of this committee would be like a strategic plan for the school, the building. Because I think what you're getting at, yes, I totally agree that like the urgent needs are something we need to talk about, but there's also a question of how much money do you want to put into something now? And then are you going to put a bunch more money into it in 20 years? So this is, there's a future of the school to think about, maybe coming up with a strategic plan for the building. I don't know if that's outside the scope of the committee, but it has to be interesting. I was just going to say, it seems like that definitely should be considered moving forward with the plan. It's obviously a school that makes sense. And I think to keep in mind that there are people who are drawn to Danville because it has a really great school system, but there's also people who won't come to Danville because they don't have a choice. And depending on how much the tax rate is going to go up, obviously that's going to be repellent as well. So keeping in mind what you're saying, what you guys are both saying, with regards to how is that going to impact enrollment in the long-term future of it. And I was also going to say, just in response to what Doug was saying, that just keeping that cost piece in mind for all of us, because it is a bottom line, and keeping in mind the fact that the budget already seems like it's bumping up the tax rate coming in. If they need standard in the legislators.
well, that's not relevant here. So
Say it again.
that's not relevant tonight.
No, I'm just saying
So-
in general, just thinking of what people are paying in general, you know, tax-wise, just in keeping the cost in mind. But the other last thing that I had was do we happen to know, and this might be something we get to in a little bit, but is there a structural issue in the building that cannot support another one? Is it a structural issue, or can nothing go on top?
You're asking me, can we stack Legos?
Yeah, well, that's.
No,
Okay.
Because, so we can't, that's all they've been doing. In 1950, 68, they stacked Legos around their Legos. In 1970, whatever, they stacked Legos around their Legos. They glued them together with glue. And what we have now is a monstrosity of a disaster, and we're not stacking any more Legos.
No, I wasn't gonna, that's not where I was going. I want to make sure I'm being clear on how I'm saying it. If I'm not, I apologize. What I'm saying is, I know there's a building that you can't go on top of. People say, gosh, we couldn't even put solar panels on there. I'm wondering if we know, is there a structural issue to it, or can we just not stack on it?
No, we have, I would point you right back to the report. In the 37 building, in the 57 building, you have major foundational issues.
Foundational.
If you try to put stuff on top of this building, they'll crumble. The 57 building is made out of cinder blocks, and so you can't even put a new air handler on top of it. It can't handle the weight. But the rest of it, you have too many, and I don't know if this is true for the 80-something building, but in the 37 building, you just simply cannot put more building on top of that building because the foundation is.
I understand that, but what I'm wondering more specifically is there an actual existing current structural issue? You can't stack on it. We know it's cinder blocks, but there's not like a concern for safety at this point. Do we know that? There is not?
No, we don't, no, outside of probably within 5 or 6 years, if we don't do something with the roof on the 57 building, it's coming. So I think that's our number one structural issue. Our second structural issue is the energy handlers that are on top of the buildings that are failing, that we've put $1 million into grant money, still don't work properly and need to be replaced, and the building can't handle the weight of those. So,
In relation to that, is there more grant money or some sort of compensation to deal with?
So we're going to get to that later, but right now we're on the purpose and the role of the committee.
Okay, gotcha.
So you got me rambling, and so we want to move on. Are we past purpose and role of the committee? And Molly, can you come up with something from that? Do we want to make a strategic plan?
Yes.
Do we want to continue? Do we want to talk about prioritizing needs as part of the purpose and the role of the committee? Do we want, well, what else do we have for her conclusions? Let's help Molly finish her minutes here.
I'm hearing a lot around priorities and urgency, a plan, strategic plan, and planning for those priorities that we have in the building. Code, I think the code piece is important. Again, the conversation around choice and not having choice when the high school comes up, but that's.
So I think that's consider all options. You have to, we just have to say that we need to consider all options.
Yes, yeah.
And then also, can we put in consider the cost to the community? I think that'll cover Doug.
Yeah.
If we just consider the impact of whatever we do on the community.
Yeah.
And that says regarding the make good, but also
With
the space issue.
Right, with the space issue as well.
Yeah, make sure we're addressing the needs that we have.
Eric.
Yeah, just to add on to highlight one of Doug's points, I think a big role of this committee will be making the case for what we've decided to this community. From the folks that want to close the school to the folks that want to spend gazillions of dollars, and everybody in between.
Ongoing outreach?
Our role.
Ongoing community outreach? Will that work?
Yeah. I think so.
Ongoing community outreach.
But I don't think it's something to take lightly.
So this Bruce starts talking about going to Marty's. I don't even go to Marty's. It's not even worth it. It's going to get hollered at. So they're going to holler at me. They're going to put for sale signs in the yard.
I was at Goodfellas about a month ago, and somebody came over and started talking to me, and I'm like, I'm not on the school board anymore. Go to a school board meeting.
Yeah. All right.
But one thing I did want to add that we have in here is what Allison said about making sure we have our operational budget and this capital project that I think what the community sees, if they do see increases in both, that's definitely something to think about. The impact of our taxes on residents and how those intersect too.
All right. So, okay. So we got it down to $1.45. So the budget's not bad. It's $1.45. It's not, we're gonna go forward. I'm gonna ask you for $1.45. It's not as doom and gloom as you make. And with that, I want to move on to the ongoing assessments by the AOE and of the Danville School facility. I'm gonna let Sean McNamara speak on this one a little bit because he's got us some welcome news, some good news. I talked to you briefly, to some of you and to the advisory group, we knew that there was a second report that was going on, that the state had assessed some of the, was doing a separate facility assessment that was not related to our work, and it sort of corroborated a lot of our work, and they've been back. Sean?
Hi, everybody. So it started last Monday, and we finished up on Thursday. It's a Veritas group that's come in and they're working for the state. And basically what they're doing is they have a fancy iPad that has some magic in it, where they take a picture of a sink and they put in what year that sink was installed, what type of sink it is, motors, nameplate ratings, and it does an algorithm of some sort where we will come up with a list of what's crucial, what's failed, what needs to be replaced now, what might last forever. Yep, and we should have results of that in a couple of months tops, is what I'm told.
Didn't you already present that?
No, what I presented, so what the one that I showed you in August, or the one that the board showed you in August, is the one that we've had since last December, and that was the facilities assessment index, or facilities.
Yeah.
So what's that middle word? Something index? FCI. And so a building, and so the state went through and they did that sort of a thing, but from a desk.
Okay.
Elsewhere, they came out and looked around, and they went and they got a stats where we graded at 92% worn out. But this is all more on hand, and like I said, they're taking pictures of all the stuff, and they're looking behind walls and looking in crevices to get a much better view of what we specifically need urgently to take care of.
And is that a free service?
No, your taxpayers are paying for that. Those are your tax dollars paying for that. Nothing. That's one of those where there's nothing free. It's not going to cost us specifically,
Right.
but it's going to cost the whole state across the board. It's in the ed
Okay,
fund.
so the state government.
But this is the good news, where the state knows they have a problem. And the state knows they don't have a problem. The state knows they have 1,000 problems. And so the state knows that if we have 1,000 problems, we're about to have 1,000 emergencies, and maybe they'll start dealing with it. And if we have something that we can show them, this is ready to go, maybe we can get close to the front of the line, because we've done our homework for years. So hopefully that. So anything else on that one, Sean? Because I'm going to you for the next one as well. So this is just I briefly want to let you sort of describe what you think in your couple of years that you've been here, since you've really been digging deep into this place. What are the areas of greatest need in this facility, just right off the bat? What's the most urgent few things that you can tell us that we might know from the report? And one of them would have been the bleachers, but now that's fixed. But so some of the rest of the critical structures, can you tell us what some of those things are?
The number one in my eyes is the air handlers. They went in, there's 10 of them. They went in 1990. The life expectancy of those units was 2010. So with 13 years over the life expectancy of those units right now. When COVID hit and we had New England Air come in, and because the air was turned off in the building, when they turned the air back on, it was discovered that it's 100% outside air. There was no heating coils, so we could not turn any air on in the wintertime without freezing everybody to death. So we had some heating coils installed in the ductwork, just so that we can have the air flowing, because that's the number one cure of everything right now, whether it's COVID, PCBs, asbestos, it's air movement. That cures everything, apparently. So these air handlers that we have now, they are either 100% on at top speed or they are off. There's no VFDs. We cannot control the speed of the air that's coming in. We cannot control the amount of air that's going in, because they're 100% outside the air right now with the coils installed. The louvers on the rooftop units themselves, on some of them had to be removed physically, and the other ones forced in the open position. They cannot close. They are 100% open. And that's just so that we can get close to the air changes per hour, which are required by the state. For a school right now, it's 5 to 7 air changes per hour for any room, no matter what the size is. I had Precision Air come in last year when we were getting ready to open up parts of the school when COVID was starting to slow down, and we wanted to have music classes and things like that. So we had the music rooms, the theater, and the art rooms air balanced. Then I can't tell you off the top of my head what all those results were, but I can tell you that 3.4 was the highest air change that we had in any one of those areas. which is still below the suggested lowest number for an air change. Myself have changed parts on at least every single one of these units once, if not 3 to 4 times. New England Air comes out to replace contactors, it's almost on a regular basis. The parts that were initially in these units, you can't get them anymore, they just don't make them. So we're trying to find parts that are compatible with the other parts that we had to replace because we couldn't replace them. They're a mess, basically. We did get a couple of proposals to have them replaced since I've been here. The most recent proposal was to have all 10 removed and replaced with 3 units that would tie into all the ductwork throughout the facility. And that was $657,000 something. And that was back, we got that quote back in 2021, I believe, end of 2021. And obviously, like Bruce was saying, and I think Doug touched on it too, is cost of materials today, every day they change, literally every day. So that, if I got a quote to have those done today, and we didn't sign a contract saying, yeah, we're gonna do it tomorrow, a month, a week later, it could be 10,000, could be 100,000. Nobody knows. The market's just so volatile right now. So that's the air handlers. My number 2 thing on my list would be to have some heating controls in the facility. So the entire facility, with the exception of the propane boilers that we added for COVID and the ductwork, it's fed off of either the biomass plant or the 2 new oil burners that were put in down in the basement. And all of that does is either one of those separate entities heats the entire loop through the school. So the entire school is basically radiant heat, right? It's into hot water, forced hot water, you get a supply and a return, and we're just cycling water through the facility. In the 1936 building, half the thermostats work, some of them don't. The actuators on the heating units themselves, some are 100% open, some are 100% closed. I've had several plumbers come in to look at specifically the 36 building during school years. This wasn't during the summer or anything, and you can't even shut those off right now without draining the entire system, because just to actuate that valve that would shut the water off to that unit, it just starts leaking out of all of them. They're all copper soldered joints from 100 years ago. And just to have some sort of a control, so we can have off hours. Most facilities, most buildings, houses. You leave your house in the morning, you don't keep your heat at 68 degrees. You turn it down. I do anyway. I don't keep it at 68 degrees. I turn it down. Nobody home. Why waste all that energy to keep the dog warm? And we don't have that capability right now. And that alone would be an enormous savings in oil, wood chips, water, electricity, right down the line. You're saving money on everything by putting a control system in where you can control something. You can get onto a laptop or a computer, and Bruce will give me a call. My room's cold. I could pop it up. Oh, look, Bruce's room's at 65 degrees. I'm required to keep it at 68 to 72. Let's turn the temperature up a little bit. Boom, done. Instead of going down and, yeah, your thermostat's broken and we can't, you gotta put on a sweater. We don't like saying put on a jacket, like my mother used to say. So a control system is, it's a standard thing in anything that's built today or installed today. There's some sort of a control system on it. You can either monitor remotely or actuate and function that's the capability of whatever system you have in place, rather than just you're on or you're off, which is basically where the school is at right now for heating. The electrical system here. I am an electrician. I've been an electrician since 1994 when I got out of the Marine Corps, and I built schools, courthouses, you name it. So one of the first things I looked at when I got here was the electrical system. And it is old, obviously. It hasn't been touched since 1967, to my knowledge, that I can find on record anywhere. Some of the circuit breaker panels, they don't even make them. They're either out of business completely, or you can't find a break to replace it. So like main distribution systems, 400 amp distribution systems, it's tied to the generators and everything that supplies the entire school. The systems of that size are required to be inspected at least once every 3 years. And what that entails is where we have a generator, we'll fire up the generator, we'll disconnect from regular power, run on the generator, they'll rack a breaker out of that unit, put it through all these tests to ensure that it's going to trip when it's supposed to trip, that it's putting up the correct amperage. Of the 5 companies I called, one said that they would come in and do it, but they could not guarantee me that the power would turn back on when they put that switch back on because of the age of it. And that's just because it's old. And I can't find any record of it being exercised or tested, so I have to assume that it hasn't been exercised and tested. So I lose sleep over that one, actually. 4, the gym. So the 1990 edition in the gym. And since I got here, this has become profoundly larger. There are stress cracks from the floor to the ceiling in at least 7 spots in the gym, mostly in the locker room areas. If you come in the side doors off the parking lot into the gym, right by the boys' locker room area there, you'll see a wall and a crack that's probably a half inch. You can look through the crack and see light. When I started here in 2020 of November, that crack was the size of a pencil lead. So I don't know what's going on over there. Obviously, there's some shifting. The drains in locker rooms are higher than the floor level. So the drains have popped up through the floor, settling, shifting, one or the other, both. That's a concern. And there is no retaining wall on the guardrail side of the gym. If you come around the backside, maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. I'm not a structural engineer. I'd like to get one in here and look at that. Let's see. Sprinklers. So schools, now if you build a school, you are required to be 100% covered by sprinklers. We obviously fall into a grandfather clause because of the age of the school. We have approximately 25 sprinkler heads existing now in the facility. They are all copper pipe, which you don't see sprinklers in copper pipe. And I think it was 1980 when they stopped that. Excuse me. Prior to 1980, you were allowed to have a copper sprinkler system for mechanical spaces only. So there's a couple of areas that some are classrooms, some are small reading rooms that have these in them. But at one point in time, they were some sort of a machine room, whether they had a water heater in there or some type of equipment that's not there anymore. When I called to have the sprinkler required by state law, by fire marshal, at least once every 2 years to have the sprinkler system drained, tested, test the backflows, the flow switches tied into the fire alarm system. And all that is if you pop a sprinkler head and that water starts flowing out of there, that sets off a flow switch that's in line on the pipe system, which sends a signal back to the fire alarm panel that says something's bad, a sprinkler head pops. I was finally able to get a company to come in and drain and test the system. There were 5 of those sprinkler heads that you wouldn't even have known they were sprinkler heads if you looked at them. They looked like stalactites. I don't even know how they hadn't burst. They were just solid rock and crystal. So when I had those replaced, a lot of companies wouldn't come in because when you're working with a copper solid pipe that's that old, draining the system is not a problem. Changing those sprinkler heads is not a problem. But when you recharge those lines, you are putting a lot of pressure on those pipes, and those pipes can burst. Those solder joints can blow, and then you're in the a bigger mess. This isn't the only school that has it, if it makes you feel any better. So the sprinkler system needs some updating and repairing. If not added to the entire facility, at least replaced or removed from some of the areas that it currently is existing in. Lighting, I don't know if everybody's aware. This month, I forget the exact date, compact fluorescent Edison-based screw-in light bulbs that the government said everybody's got to use these 20 years ago because they're going to save the world. Well, you won't be able to buy those anymore after this month. The mercury content in them is so high in high doses in junkyards and dumps, and they just can't control it. So, state of Vermont specific, the whole country probably not far behind Vermont, but you will not be able to buy a compact fluorescent bulb in the state of Vermont after this month. February 2023, February 2024, you will no longer be able to buy any fluorescent bulbs. This room obviously is LED fixtures. I've gotten count of every fixture in this entire facility that is not an LED. And before every single school, building, state building, house decides that they need to get rid of all these fixtures, it might be a good idea for us to jump on that because there's only so many electricians in this state that are going to be able to do all these jobs. And if we don't jump on that quick, we may, wind up waiting. And when those lights go out, and eventually they do everything in the life expectancy, we will not be able to replace it. Yes.
And I'm sorry, I not can wait to the end too, but will you be able to be with us in this process? Is that the plan or intention?
In this group process,
Yes.
I'm going to be here.
I'm gonna need your help. So as much as you can be available would be great.
And
I'll
the
be here
reason
every meeting.
Awesome, thank you. It's so helpful to hear this. And one of the main reasons I'm asking this is because this is such a trend, like you're talking about with the light bulbs, right? And then even biomass, there's a big sort of push now, like biomass issues, like all of this stuff. So back to the long-term sustainability plan, I know we can't call everything, I know we can't plan for everything, things are gonna change, but any guidance I would put out along the way for, that's not a long-term thing. Like if we can have that in the path, so we don't do something that we're like 10, 20 years later, like, oops, we're, that's banned now. And I know we can't know everything, which is such a pattern. So I would just ask for any guidance on that if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
As we go.
And unfortunately, everything, this isn't the 70s anymore. Everything, whether it's a hold-out chair or a camera that goes on a stand, everything is built to break.
Yeah, I know.
Right? You can't buy parts for something anymore and fix it for the most part, large pieces of equipment.
All right, let me cut you off just for a second and then let you go back. At our meeting, our regular scheduled meeting in January, the superintendent talked about some federal money that came available. He's got a lengthy grant process to go through. And I'm sure he's talking about this because you're now running 3 facilities for him. But there might be a pathway to get some of this lighting taken care of. And so he said it was complicated, but there was that lighting might fall into this and some electrical might fall into this. But this is one of those places where there may be some money. And then when it's that money, it's not necessarily as urgent not to spend bad after good. If you can replace all the lights in it with LEDs and then work around that, that might be a good thing. But there's a potential there for some money that doesn't come directly from our taxpayers. And the superintendent is looking into that with Sean's help.
And I was also going to ask about the stuff on the roof. What is the name you say about that? I'm sorry, I'm not mechanical at all.
The air handlers?
The air handler. There was a grant originally, it sounded like. Is there any potential for grant pathways?
So right now, there's literally a grant for everything.
Okay.
It's just getting the grants.
Right.
First you apply, then you have to be selected. It's a long process. Mark and Mike and Jesse over with the CCSU heavily involved in that. I apply for grants all the time. Obviously, they go through them. We just got a grant for cabin for their wood chip boilers is dying. So there's literally all the COVID money that used to be for like just COVID, and now that it's fizzling down, they're starting to spend that on just about anything really. No, you're welcome. Which one was I on?
You just finished LEDs. You just finished fluorescent lights in number 6. So you're on 7.
Number 7, parking lots. It'd be nice to have roads that drain properly. At the end of those was one of the balance, but it would be a lot nicer to have roads and parking lots. And again, 3 years ago, you could just call somebody and come out and pave it, but now for every drop of water that you displace, you need to have certain drainage, certain this, everybody's, there's 10,000 engineers that gotta get their fingers into it. But drainage is a big thing everywhere in the state of Vermont right now. And paving these lots would be extremely helpful. Drainage and snow removal and mud and everything. And that's just my quick 7-digit list. The list gets a little bigger every day. The more I dig into this and dig into that, it's like, like going in a home, buying an old house, trying to keep it running.
There.
Just getting back to what Rob was mentioning about the priorities and just in the discussion here that brought up the tremendous amount of deferred years. And going through my mind now, it's like, is it even worth putting the money into, like the 57 building they said, is it worth putting any money in, or should that money be used to going towards a new facility as a same thing as the original?
36.
You could pour money into that. So,
I think that you're sitting in the same spot we were sitting a few months ago. Those buildings they're not viable going forward.
But I think that goes back to what Rob was mentioning, that we have to prioritize what is like the most important that we have to look at. And that might be that, that really, how do we deal with this? They're going to be options. You're not going to know until you start putting these things down. Because from just our discussion that we're having, it's like you're kind of going like this, and as the information becomes available, then you can go, well, now we have to do this. So I think until you kind of sit down and kind of methodically through that, we're going to keep going back and forth.
But if you've got areas such as that may be demolished within 5 years, do we put in sprinklers and all that other stuff? If that's if it's allowable to ignore a structure that may not last.
If part of your 10-year plan is to remove this building, then
Right.
Nobody would make you sprinkle, I would hope.
Right.
Eric?
Yes, I had sort of a couple things onto that. One, it would really help us set the priority for the strategic plan, and we talked about that. But also getting a really good idea of what the usage looks like in the school here. Like why is space a big issue? Because I know that we sort of shifted a lot from large classrooms to a lot of interventionalists and a lot of
Special educators, sure.
Yeah, that we have that I know is coming up in the budget, but also is sort of coming up in space. So that will help, I think, also look at potentially creative solutions if we have maybe we might not need huge spaces if we just need a lot of sort of separate spaces and maybe we can sort of think through some of that. But I think those two things will really help us set the priorities of understanding what the space usage is and what our strategic plan is growing and what we hope to do in terms of grabbing tuition students as well as population growth here or decline.
But if we can try to figure that out. Yes, sir, Rob.
But and in the connection with that, it's getting harder to get staff, instructional staff.
It is.
And that has a big impact on the spaces. If you add new spaces, present you need more staff.
Right.
we need to look at that as we look at the structure.
I think we asked that question, and Mark Tucker said that it wouldn't need more staff. I asked that question.
We did.
I did, and because I said, well, have we taken into account, additional staffing into this dollar amount? And he said that there would be additional staffing, we're looking for additional space for the existing staff. It's not.
But if we've got the program, which is full, right? And we had a bunch that were not in that program for students. And that meant we didn't have adequate space for those others and adequate instructional staff for those others that were not accepted in the program. And then that means that you need more space and more stuff, right?
That's the truth. That's the truth this year, for sure. The truth.
Yeah, that wasn't more that we had like 30 kids in the class and that new education skill.
No, in this particular go round, we couldn't fit all of the preschoolers available into the classrooms that we have. So in this particular, so we're turning away citizens right from the jump. Like the minute that you walk through the door, I'm 3. Hey, guess what? I'm 3. Let me come to Danville school, and we say, well, you can't because you're 3 and you're smaller. And so now that person's got to find a different school, and so that's going to set you back on your ongoing tuition. So so because we have the space issue, and because we can only put X number of children in those preschool classrooms, that's the space concern. We can't accommodate really much fluctuation in the 3-4 ages when it fluctuates. And so, and this is one of those things where Robert Egger once tracked it, and he tracked, how many births occurred in Danville, and then he cross-checked it with whether it was cold in the winter. And all things, he was a mathematician, right? All the parts of it, he couldn't let it go. And so, but when we had some data a few years ago that births in Danville were edging up. This may have changed with the property price. Where property prices are going, now there's not a lot of available spaces, and they also need to be snatched up by out-of-state folks. But we we are currently not ready for the population of the preschool. And this happened when my 7th grader was a preschooler, when her 6th grader was a preschooler, when your 4th grader was a preschooler, when you got one above every one of those, but when your current preschooler is a preschooler.
Like, I'm happy the reasons of population.
Right, it might simply have been you. And in that case, you have to be ready for what your population is going to do, but you also have to understand in those years that you might have created a space that you don't need that day, but the space is important. And so when we're looking at spaces, and we can't just look at repairs of the current spaces. Again, we have some buildings over here that are failing, but we're in the same soup that the advisory group was in 10 months ago, and that the school's been in for a couple of years. We're all talking about the same sort of a thing. And so I think that's where we're headed. And so the pressing needs of the school will remain the pressing needs that the report indicated, and remain the pressing needs that we originally started this on, which is the adequate educational space in the building, and we don't have enough. And so I went to Rob's house recently and talked to Rob about this, and he talked about maybe if one of the possibilities was we massively scale down what the new build is, because we looked at those modulars were over in South Bergen, how they just doubled in price, and they didn't get any better, they just doubled in price. And so they may not be necessarily a wise investment, but what if a wise investment is to put concrete in the ground and build a much smaller structure that houses some of our stuff to move out, so that we can do the rest of this work in phases. And so when we start talking about possibilities, we might have to start talking about that. But it's going to drive the numbers up higher. And we're going to eventually get to a point where we're going to say, what of these pressing needs can we handle, and how can we handle the space issue, and what are we going to bring to the town? Bruce.
I'd be curious, I don't know who the architect was that gave, Fairfax their estimate, but I've been following that on WCA. I actually printed out the information today, but 36 million, and they're going to add 9 classrooms. I think they're going to renovate one of their science rooms, and like I said, put in a sprinkler system. When we were looking at 32 million just to bring our building up to code, not really add anything. So
there are some in New Hampshire that are going through the same process too. I have to look back. There was a school that was similar size of ours that I want to look back and see, but their estimates were lower as well. But there are a lot of factors that But I think you're right, that there's some that are much lower.
But, and as you get in the design stage, you look at the value of engineering, how's your master?
Right.
And that can bring down the cost. And I have ideas.
We'll welcome them, for sure. All right. So I think we're ready to see the facility.
One more question I have. That's come up about the report and about Truex Collins and whether we would want a second opinion. Is that something that this group is feeling like we're heading in that direction of that 32 million report? Are you all feeling like we need another set of eyes in terms of the financial options that we received?
I mean, I don't think that we need to hire another firm, but I think, you know, it wouldn't be a bad idea to take some of the most expensive portions of it and put 3 bid out just to vet them.
Get pricing on.
Because I'm sure a lot of your stuff came out of a database, the national database probably.
Sure. That's right.
So
That's what everyone does actually use.
and I do the same for my companies when we build it because
A lot more, you can probably reduce.
Right.
Can you say that part
there
again?
are some areas of opportunity where we may say, all right, hey, look, this isn't as bad. And then there may be some that's like, you know, that's gone up now. So, but I think that's important to do that with the good.
So, okay, and so some of the other information that we're going to get from the state reporting might help us to do some of this stuff without having to spend any extra money as well. So,
I mean, I've been happy with the work they've done. I'd just be curious, as I said, and who knows, it could have been them that did the BFA Fairfax estimate.
Yeah.
So, and as Rob said, there are factors. I don't know when BFA Fairfax School was built, you know, so they may not be looking. And I've been to that school many times. They do have a lot more area where they can add on. We're kind of limited as to what we can do. And at one point when we even started talking about an addition, we were just talking about maybe a couple of classrooms out.
that was the genesis of this.
Heading out towards Route 2. And then we came up with this big project, and here we are 3 years.
We tried to solve all our problems.
Right,
Obviously.
yeah, so.
And we were trying to figure out how to solve our problems, and we hoped that it would be, we were worried it might be an 8-digit number, and it turned out to be a giant 8-digit number, and here we are again.
And it might be the fact we have so many buildings of different ages, and Sean may be able to speak to that. Trying to connect all those systems adds more cost than other schools would see too, possibly.
Well, I brought up in the beginning when I got involved, there isn't any master plan for this.
Right, that's,
You know, because you usually get a master plan when you add on, you know, you say, okay, in the future, we'll go in this direction, you know.
Mm-hmm.
No, it was just dropped into place, like this building right here, 57, was just dropped into a really bad spot, so you couldn't expand easily, cleanly. You know, it was a disaster.
Yeah.
right. Moving on from areas of greatest need of the facility, we're going to close that one out for tonight. The next thing we were going to talk about was a moderator or a facilitator. And this is on the agenda because we weren't quite sure what this room was going to look like. The last couple of rooms have been a little yelly, let's say, a little people coming in and they weren't quite sure what was happening, but they were mad about it. And so I wasn't sure if when we continue these things, there was going to be a need for a moderator to help us put some ideas and to help us more specifically where we have ideas that are stuck in somebody's head, to help us put some ideas aside for now that we can work our way back to. And how you guys wanted to see this building facilitated. And we can do nothing on this for now, but Eric wanted to do some facilitation work going forward, and I might be willing to share that with him if you guys want me to do that, or if you guys want me to just continue to be the guy that does the pointing, and we can go like this for a while. So we talked about this briefly at the last meeting.
Yeah, I sort of done it for the advisory group, so I was.
Yeah,
I was willing to continue, but if nobody's after me, that's fine too.
But it wasn't a thing where I wanted to step on any toes, because I was watching those movies at home, and you were doing a fine job, and so I didn't want to act like that this needed to be taken away from you.
No.
But if it's just, I mean, if you guys are okay with us just all talking in this sort of a tone of voice, and then I do this when it's somebody else's turn to talk, and that's all I do, and I try not to tut, and I try not to talk too much. If that's okay with everybody, we can continue like this until there's a need.
Yeah, I think that works fine. I mean, I don't see the committee getting too much bigger, number one. Number two, And I go back to, again, I always try to be transparent, and you folks are too, but it's on people to do their homework. Okay,
Well, they don't. They don't.
And I know,
All right,
but
so-
I think, in a very respectful, polite way, I think when somebody comes in and says, I didn't know anything about this, say, well, look, we're not here tonight to go back to, point one. Go back to minutes of the meetings. Again, going back to an issue we had a couple years ago, I started getting phone calls at home. I didn't know anything about this, and I got emails.
Mhm.
Please go back and look at the minutes. This has come up since 2 years ago. So I think we can do that. You can do that, the board, in a respectful, polite way to urge people to say, go back and look at the minutes. You have public input, so we'll give you 3 minutes. But I don't think that's the time. Our job as a committee is to, really get to work and make a proposal to the board that the board then either will accept, and then they'll vote on it, and then they go back to the community. At that point, before you do that, and it's going to be a bond vote way down the road, that's the time when you have, your outreach, like I said. You want to have outreach as much as possible. But going back to Act 46, you were on that, Clayton, towards the end, I believe. Dave was on that.
No, I came on when it was all over because nothing else is ever going to be hard on the school board. I was going to get to just sit here.
Tim was on that. I mean, we had several public input sessions. Some right here in the cafeteria, some in the gym. I remember Marvin Withers told me if he was still working here, he would have killed me because I had the janitor set up like 100 chairs one night, thinking we were going to get a bunch of people, and I think 10 people showed up. So
That was that. All right. Alex.
And I'm just going to say on that note, I think back to what Molly said is we also, I think, what you're saying, Bruce, have to acknowledge the fact that there's some people, it's busy, they're working, they got so much going on, and then they hear me, what's going on? I know, no idea. So I think there should be a point person, and I wouldn't mind even taking that on if someone comes in, because we don't need to waste committee time, so to speak, catching someone up on the whole story, but maybe to point them in the right direction. Right. So I do feel that's really important as people hear about it, because that's, not everybody knows what's going on. Right. For many reasons. So I could definitely do that, or whoever.
We'll see.
Take that on.
Dave.
Yeah, with there's a Danville School Building Project page attachments on the school board site, and if people wanting to catch up, they would go here and look at the meetings and the videos and stuff like that, point them to that. It will save a lot of backtracking to catch somebody up that wants to come in.
Yeah, that's just it. We're back to you got to do your homework and you got to work backwards from where you wandered in, and so
also everybody they should have an email address to the building. What is it called?
So there's we have a mailing list that goes to the Danville building facility. So
if I can update the mailing list.
Okay.
Okay,
Sarah and I can update the mailing list to have whoever you've.
So we have everybody's here for now. So everybody that's here, I know your interest. Whether you want me to or not, I know it. So and Larry knows it too. So we'll have that updated. All right. All right. So for right now, we'll put moderator facilitator on hold. It's possible during the public outreach that we'll do something. But like I say, I'm not here to. I listen to myself talk in the mirror all the time at home, so I get enough of myself. So I know you guys probably get enough of me too. So if you want somebody else to start talking, just start talking, and I'll take a back seat.
I think Clayton too, the facilitator, to Katie's point about the strategic plan, somebody who has knowledge on that part of the process. If we go forward with that, that's where I was seeing like a.
Because you have these experts, not experts out there, but who've done that a lot.
Right.
So I'd love to keep those options open, because it may be possible that sort of small expenditure of money makes us a little bit better group. If somebody can come in and can sort of help us galvanize our thoughts, because then we can be better speakers on that. So the idea of a facilitator is mentioned here, because it's just possible that we can stop ourselves from spinning in circles if somebody can come in and say the clarity's there, you just don't see it, to help us see clarity. So
you mean like a subject matter expert, someone who's done this that not so much guides us, but Sarah is like the expert that understands. It's like if we start going down a wrong road, like, well, I can't really do that because, or what do you have?
There's people who are experienced in facilitation and planning and strategic planning. So not necessarily with the construction background, but more to guide the process to make sure everybody's heard or make sure, you're just moving forward and then making sure you're setting goals and to build a strategic plan. There's a certain process to actually build that plan. So the end result, the outcome of that would be you'd end up with a strategic plan, say for 3 years for the school. That's actually a profession that people do that for a job. So the construction aspect in terms of the building is helpful too, but I think to move the process forward and make sure we're not getting too sidetracked, and to really build a plan, you could have somebody who has that expertise would be really helpful. Or not, we could decide as a group that we don't think it's worth the investment and we have enough expertise in our group to do that. But if we need it, somebody could be there for that help.
I think we wait and see how the process goes.
Right, yeah.
It might be something that just helps us when we are all having our thoughts to help us figure out what is noise and what puts us in the right direction.
Right.
All right. So with that one's closed off. And so the next thing on the agenda here is the scheduling of the ongoing meetings. Do you guys want to commit to bi-weekly? Do you want to go monthly? I know we've got some information that might be very, very valuable to us, but it might be a couple of months before we get it. But I think in the meantime, there's going to be some additional information as we go with some of these other grants that we look at. And do you guys have any thoughts on how often that you think we should meet, Rob?
Well, we're not going to put this on a bond vote in March.
We're not going to put it on the bond vote in March.
So it's a process, and I think that it'd be good for us to not rush it, to do it right, to reach out. And I would suggest once a month, if that works out.
I think initially, bi-weekly, just because
Oh,
we're
okay.
jumping into it. I think initially, maybe the first couple of months, just kind of jump into it. And then once we find our groove and we understand the objectives and we understand our points, and maybe at that point I agree monthly, but I think more frequently initially. This usually.
It's a lot of meetings, but I can do it.
It is.
I was leaning towards what Rob said, and I'm kind of in the middle now because.
Every 3 weeks. There you go. That's consensus, folks. We did it. We did it. Meeting adjourned.
I think maybe meet within a couple of weeks so that we can at least have an idea of who our committee is.
Yeah.
Get it out there that we're going to meet, the next meeting day of the Danville Building Committee is such and such. If you're interested in being on the committee, please show up at that meeting or please participate by Zoom. And obviously, if somebody's got a conflict, someone says, hey, I really want to be on the committee. I'm going to be out of town that night. Okay, that's understandable. But then we've got our committee set. Okay, then after that, maybe we start, because then we're also going to, by another couple of weeks, the town report's going to come out sometime soon. We're going to be able to look at our budget. So right now, people want to digest that.
Sure. We wanted to look at the one thing separately from this other thing and realize that this is not on that.
So then maybe after that, we meet, a couple weeks later in February, and then maybe Lance said, then maybe we go monthly after that.
So what if we look at what if we look at, because also over the winter break, a lot of people get out of Dodge. So what if it's possible that we look at one more meeting in January and then a meeting before the break in February and then town meeting, and then we talk about coming back. So we're going to look at some available dates. Everybody get your phones out. Everybody who had your phones out, put them away, and then make a show of getting them out like you weren't already doing, like you haven't been ignoring me forever.
Right.
So I've got a vote over here for Tuesdays, but I already know I've got a vote over here for not Tuesdays.
Right.
So I got choir practice over here. The most valuable man in the room says not Tuesdays. So
Yeah, we're all here on a
Biggest
Wednesday.
thing with me is looking at my grandkids' basketball.
Yeah, I've got the school's basketball
Sarah,
schedule.
so Sarah's a Wednesday. She has a heart out every Wednesday at 6 if she's taking a class.
What
A little
about
later, but-
Thursday?
I love Thursdays because let's see, I'm
I'm
Thursdays.
all right with that.
There's a elementary concert. or something.
Well, right, so different days, I mean,
Yeah, something.
just looking at the calendar of events and games and such, different nights, different weeks are booked already for things. So I especially if we're not talking about a regular schedule yet, if we're talking about the next meeting, I'd say ask about a date, let me look at the calendar. I can tell you
Okay,
what's
so
on it.
so here's what I heard. Now, I don't know how awful this sounds to anybody else, but I heard, I can't do Monday, I can't do Tuesday, I can't do Wednesday, and I can't do Thursday.
That's what I'm saying.
And so what you're looking at now, how can I ruin your weekend?
I can do it.
How can I ruin your Friday?
You should never do a Friday or a weekend.
I vote for Wednesday. Anyone?
So it's Wednesday, we lose only Sarah, but maybe Dave, I don't know if you can work your schedule around.
See, tonight's the 11th.
So let's look at Wednesday, because we're all here on a Wednesday right now, and this many people have made it.
Let's see the 25th. Yeah.
Wednesday, the 25th specifically at 6
So
o'clock.
Wednesday, the 25th, there's
How many games that night?
away game, boys basketball away.
That's okay, that JV, no JV boys here, I don't think.
There's the, well, that's the maple dinner.
Oh, yeah, that's a big.
We can all also get fed. No, we
I
can't.
never been to the maple dinner, but
Yeah,
I
we
guess
can't
we
eat that dinner. I
can't
might have to
really
be cooking on
overlap.
that night. It's
Well, yeah,
possible
so that might be a
It's possible I'm
problem.
cooking on that night.
So that doesn't sound like it's gonna work at all.
Yeah. Unless we do a different location.
Well, we can't do the cafeteria.
You mean out of the
I think we want to go back
Out
to the
of-
library if
out
we
of
can, as
this
soon as we can, but we don't want to go to the library and then
Maple
there's not
Dinner
enough chairs for the
doesn't
people to show up.
Here in the auditorium.
That's, I'm just, that's the appearance.
What if we do the library? Are we,
I mean,
so the Maple Dinner's just in here in the,
So we're not gonna do
the
the 25th.
auditorium, so can we do the?
Okay, so I like the 25th, and we'll,
Yeah.
what is it?
What about Mondays?
So who are Mondays bad for?
Monday the 23rd.
Maybe, yeah.
Monday the
Mondays are bad for Tim,
23rd,
but you
there's a
came to this
basketball
one.
game here, boys against Winooski.
Big boys,
Big
varsity?
Yeah,
Varsity,
JV and
Is
varsity.
that you?
That screws me up a bit.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah. There's a way boys.
So why we go away from that Wednesday?
Can we do Wednesday? Is
Well, no, I don't have to do it. Nobody, they haven't said yet I have to do it. So I can
Well,
say I'm
the
busy.
issue is, the issue is just, I don't know what kind of crowd you have. I mean, people have said it's a big event. I have not
That's true.
experienced it
40 people.
personally.
40 people eating
Oh.
dinner in front of, but not us. And then
So, I mean, if you're not,
I don't have to do it.
I don't think using the library is a problem.
Yeah, Wednesday.
I could.
I like to,
JV and.
I like the 25th, I like the 25th Wednesday still.
Wednesday. the
Let's stay on the 25th.
In the
Does it just
library?
overlap with the
Library.
6
6 o'clock in the library, and we might, yeah, 6
And
o'clock
we'll
in the
have Sarah
library.
online for the beginning, and then she'll, when class starts, she'll step out. And I will,
Wednesday, the 25th,
Yes, I'll be
6
here.
o'clock.
Do we agree?
We're doing it?
What was that?
Wednesday, the 25th at 6 o'clock. Next week.
My phone now.
And we'll be in the library.
In the library, because that we can put a table together and sit as people
Yeah.
And
working.
we have about, how many of us did we say? 15
It's
total?
15.
if you count all the various people, I got, I mean, somewhere between 14 and 18. It depends
Okay.
which, if Sean attends, if
Yeah.
Sarah and I both are here,
Right, and so for those of you that have been, ever on a meeting in Zoom, you disappear. If you're on Zoom, so this is, if you can, please be in person. If you have to be on Zoom, I understand, but when and where you can, if you're in a meeting on Zoom, you pretty much don't exist, you're just watching.
Right.
And it's hard to get a word in edgewise, and it's hard to get recognized, and it's hard to be seen as somebody participating. So if you could just try to keep that in mind. And that if you have to Zoom in, if you're sick, have to Zoom in, because we still want you.
You can have it be unmuted, so any you and unmute.
Yeah, we could do it like that.
Because it's smaller
But it's more about how you are inside of a computer, inside of a room, inside of a group.
Yeah,
You,
but then again, it is open for public, so you're right, you could end up with a few community people.
That's in the libraries?
we're gonna go in the library.
but they're certainly welcome to.
Right.
They're welcome to view it, and they're welcome to.
What I was going with was if you take the controls off and allow people to,
There's-
even though you're gonna have a disaster of people echoing.
But if we get to, so there's two kinds of Zooms for us. There's a good Zoom and there's the Zoom we're on. The good Zoom, the good Zoom is a webinar view, and then this Zoom is everybody's in the same room. So the webinar view is better, so we can keep people from being able to just blurt out words.
We don't have that.
We don't have that
That's
tonight.
gotta be Mark.
Yeah.
They kind of.
If he just sets up the meetings, then it's fine.
Yeah.
All right, so with that one, that's everything I have on the agenda for tonight. And, tell you what,
Can I put something on the future agenda item, which is on your agenda?
I have to go to public input.
Oh, there's no public here.
It doesn't, I have to say it. This is a meeting. Public input, but I'm gonna be looking at Allison. Allison, public input?
Oh, yeah.
All right, no? Okay. All right, future agenda items.
Yeah.
Katie, you got something?
I would love it if we could, at our next meeting, sit in small groups and have part paper. And
Breakout groups.
write down their ideas, whatever wild and crazy any ideas about.
Yeah.
So breakout groups, no wrong answers.
Yes, and then come back together as a whole group, because this, I know you said we're all gonna sit together, which would be better, but it's a big group, so it's hard for everybody to have an actual conversation. It'd be easier to get together in groups of like 4 and write out all of your ideas.
Well, in that case, you can individually argue and make your points.
There you go.
And
And
in that,
then you pick someone from your group to speak to the whole group, and we share all of our ideas.
so we had one gentleman, Gary, who left the group, your last group previously, and he comes and talks to me every Saturday morning. And one of the things that he thought was, you give people the assignment for the thing that they don't like. Make the case for what you don't like, in the same sort of a thing. He was basically talking about breakout groups. He's talking about defend your position and defend the other position. And so in some of those situations, I think that's good. Bruce?
I'm fine with doing what Katie suggested. I'll throw one thing out.
Please.
Just that if people say, no, let's not do that. It's almost like a homework assignment for all of us. Instead of that, how about if we all individually write down our ideas?
I think that too, but I think then you go into the smaller groups, so just sort of galvanize them.
Yeah, so let's stick with Katie's suggestion.
And a good,
That's why
I
my
think that's,
hand,
I think it's important. I mean, I think we
Come
all.
prepared.
Yeah,
Yes,
come
yes,
prepared.
you're come
that's why my hand was only like half up.
Put it together.
that is a bit what you would get with a good strategic plan facilitator, because what you would get is you would each make remarks and we give to her or animate up on the board, and then it gets organized, and then you begin to get a direction. So
We can try and do that.
well, we can do that also.
Yeah, see how we go. Everybody get a sticky note and say, I like this idea, this doesn't work.
And I think you can look at, we have space and then we have major systems that are failing. So those seem like 2 needs that we've all identified. And you can check off which ones address both of those. And I think we'll have probably a short list at that point, hopefully.
Tim?
I would also like, we talked about having a priority list for 1 infrastructure and 2 programs. And we got a list 1 through 7 of infrastructure today. So I would like a list of 1 through 5 or whatever.
Program.
Priorities.
That's Larry.
And we talked a lot about what started this all, but we didn't say what are the needs as we see them today.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, we came up a few times, like well, what's the ask? I think Allison asked.
Right, and so I would need that priority list too.
Right, so what is the origin need, what is the pressing need, what became the major programming needs?
Is it a square footage thing? Is it a number of classrooms thing? Is it a?
More than that, you had a pandemic in between.
When you started, it really are.
So that throws out its own set of rules and stuff like that.
But yeah, but I think, we heard a 1 through 7, so maybe we need another 1 through 7.
Eric?
I request a whiteboard or something we can write up on
Right.
in the room for that, because those work way better than having stuff on there.
You're the tallest, so the tall whiteboard, you're on it.
Yeah, but I don't know if the library, I don't know if we do, I haven't seen a rolling one around the building, but I
Yeah,
can,
he's a with,
we can do, definitely do use
The
of
whiteboard.
Yeah.
We can use sharp paper for that, but we have fancy whiteboards in this building?
Yeah, in some
On wheels or
places,
something?
I don't think there's one in the library, and I haven't seen one on wheels in the building, but there might be one. I didn't memorize every piece of equipment.
Look at the closets. You already hold all the closets, so.
Sean will be will hold a sheet. We'll-
Sean's homework assignment.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, I mean, we'll come up with something.
I don't
We'll
got
come up with
somewhere
something for sure to be able to do stuff.
Maybe we can move a meeting to a classroom, maybe we can move a meeting to the classroom with a
Right.
smartboard.
Right.
We could, or a whiteboard at least.
We're at a school.
Yeah.
Yeah. A classroom, I'm not sure what
I could-
what's this?
Yeah, I can bring I'll bring some cardboard in that I found in the road. You're right on that.
Okay, we can come up with a classroom, actually, the sound is gonna be easier in a classroom.
We can't make a decision about which school to be in. I know.
So
right,
for now, library, but possibly by that night, we'll have assigned a class, a specific classroom. I gotta figure out which one's gonna work well, and be roomy enough, and comfortable enough.
I mean, that's what they're designed for.
We're a lot bigger than a lot of.
And to add, I think,
Yeah, we're not gonna be in one of the first grade rooms. We'll be in a high school room. I know which room I'll pick. I already know which room is gonna work well.
just to add on to Bruce's homework assignment, I think if we can also talk to other community members too, if they have ideas, and a lot of us are here, so that's great, but if we talk to people and write down their ideas too, I think it would be good to bring along.
All right. And so before we move to adjournment, I just want to thank everybody for coming out. I want to thank everybody, so those of you on the advisory group for coming in again and sitting back down and helping us with this hard work. And Sean, thank you for all your information tonight, but thank you for coming out. It really is going to help us to have other people sitting here with us. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. There you go. I'll take a second.
I'll second.
I'll take it. All in favor?
Aye.
This meeting's adjourned. Everybody.
Thank you.